Set interval and set timeout. If we want to create a timer or execute a set of commands at a constant rate, say every second, we would write window.setInterval parentheses function parentheses open curly bracket closes curly bracket comma and the amount of time that it's going to take in milliseconds. So every second would be 1,000 milliseconds, and then close the parentheses and end it with a semicolon. Here I'm just going to write to the console hello, and when we run this, every second is going to keep on writing hello to the console forever. So in order to clear this, we would set this window set interval to a variable first. You write var my interval, whatever you want to name it, equals window.setInterval, and then the rest, everything stays the same. This will still have the same exact result, but now that we have written stored basically the set interval into this variable, then we can clear that variable, or that interval rather, using window.clearInterval and then passing it the name of the variable that we have the interval stored in this case my interval. So right there you'll see that it will no longer run, since right after we start the interval we're clearing the interval, so we don't have any hellos anymore. Just to show you that this is actually working, or a way to use this would be if you have a counter, we'll just set a variable var count. We'll set it to 0 to start, and then every time that this interval runs, we're going to increment the count by 1. And then in order for us to clear the interval, we will use an if statement that will say if the counter is equal to 3, then we're going to clear the interval. This if statement, how I showed you guys, is that if count equals 3, then do this, and then else, right? So then this is what we would have written using the example that I showed earlier. This is doing the same exact thing. You don't need you don't need the curly brackets here, just because you're just checking one condition and there's no else statement, so you can write it all in one line. It's just a shorter way of writing it. And then the reason why I have 3 equal signs is just I'm used to writing it like that, I guess. It just checks the type exactly. If this is a number and this is a number, then it's going to be with 3 equal signs. If you put 2 equal signs, then it can be a string of 3 and it will still work. But anyways, for now it's just going to be if count equals 3, then window.clearInterval my interval. So now when the count starts again, it's going to start at 0. Now I'm actually going to log the count over here, and then this right now, if I run this, it'll run this interval and then it'll check this once. So this will be checked once, and then the interval will never be cleared, since when this runs, the count is going to be equal to 0. So in order to actually make this work, I'm going to put this inside of the interval. So every time this thing runs, it's going to check again. If the count is 3, then clear the interval. If not, just keep on doing the iterations. So now when we run it, we're going to have hello count 0, 1, 2, and then it's going to stop, because as soon as that thing hits 3, the variable count, then it's going to clear the interval. That's set interval. and how to clear setInterval. setTimeout is almost the same thing. It's defined in the same exact way, with the timer being here, same exact place. The only thing is that setTimeout, we don't need to store in a variable, because setTimeout only runs the set of commands that you have inside here once, and then it terminates. So it's like running one interval after this amount of time. So after 3 seconds, I'm just going to log again to the console. And then that's it. We don't have to worry about this keeping on going, because it won't. It's a set timeout. So right now I'm going to run it. And 1, 2, 3, somewhere around there. 3 seconds have passed, it goes. And then there it clears it. You don't have to worry about clearing it. It automatically stops. So that's setInterval and setTimeout. Math.random. If we want a random number, we will use Math.random. What Math.random does by itself, just by running this, it will give us a number between 0 and 1 to about 16 decimals, I think. So just to show you that, I'm going to log it to the console, Math.random, and when we run it, we will see 0.78, however many decimals are there. Refresh the page, It's always going to give you a decimal number between 0 and 1 to about 16 decimal places. And we could actually put that in a setInterval. So now when we run this, you'll see that it gives us 0 to 1. If we want to round this number, and you can look at just Google math, JavaScript math, and then it'll give you all the methods of the math class. One of the methods is what we just did, is a math.random, and then another method is math.round. And this rounds whatever parameter that you pass into it. It's going to round it to the nearest integer. So in our case, we could log, instead of logging math.random, we're going to log math.round, and then we're going to pass math.random into it as a parameter, and then what we should get is either 0 or 1. So then the last thing I'm going to say about Math.random is that if we wanted to have a number from 0 to, say, 22, then we could just say variable random between equals Math.random multiplied by 22. And then to make that a whole number, we will put Math.round and put all this in parentheses. So now I'm going to log this to the console, and we will get a number from 0 to 22. I think that covers Math.random, at least for the basics. I guess the main ones would be that Math.random, .round, .floor, and .seal. Random is random number 0 to 1. Round rounds to the nearest integer. Floor rounds to the nearest integer minus, like negative of the value that whatever you get. So floor, if you round 0.8, it'll give you 0. If you round 3.2, it'll give you 3. If you round 3.9, it'll give you 3. It's always going to floor it to the nearest integer in the negative direction. Seal is the exact opposite. If you round 0.8, it's going to give you 1. If you round 3.2, it's going to give you 4. and 3.9 will give you 4. Code indents and naming conventions. This is pretty important in that it makes your code easier to read, and the indents do, and the naming conventions makes your code easier to understand. So, for example, a convention that's pretty basic would be if you have a function definition, some function. This is how it would look, right? The line that you start your f from your function is gonna, wherever your function ends, is gonna be on the same line, and then any code inside the function is gonna be one tab in code here. So if you go to the next line, you're automatically gonna be indenting to here. You say variable, whatever. That's basically it. You start a function, you end the function on the same line, and the guts or the body of the function is going to be on the same line, indented. And then this also applies to if statements and switch statements, for loops, pretty much anything that you define something on the outside and then you have guts or body inside of it. And then it also is the same exact way if you have one of these things inside a function. So for example, if we have an if statement inside this function down here, if whatever equals something, we're going to do the same exact thing. We have an open and closing statement, and then the body or the guts of this, we're going to indent it one more in there. And it keeps on going. If you have a switch statement in here, for some reason, you're just going to keep on indenting the body. So this way, you know, you at least know where things begin and they end. You know where the code is, begins and end, where the if statements, everything. It's a lot cleaner. A thing about comments is, I guess the two main ways that I've seen is that you write it right before something. So right before this function, I would comment, you know, purpose display indents. Right, you write it right before the function or right before whatever that you're trying to explain, or you can tab them and indent them on the same line somewhere around there. That way you don't have to, it gets kind of messy, you do it like this. I like doing it like this better just because it really separates your code is on the left side and then your comments are on the right side. If you can read the code and you have how you're naming your functions and your variables, you could pretty much understand what's going on in the code. You really don't need the comments. The comments are just in case, like you don't get something, or you know, you have something that you need to explain to the developer or to yourself later on. And then for the naming conventions, how you name your variables and your functions, that just use common sense. Don't name a function TT that moves something. On the margin left, or for example, if you have something like this, if you have a function that moves something somewhere, try to name that function something like that, like move left. At least that gives it a better definition. Like, try to make your functions say, try to name your functions like what they do. And again, just use common sense for that. Don't name TT and 55 and just random random stuff. That's about it.